Hi, we are at EGX Rezzed, and this is Tim Wicksteed from Big Pharma and from Twice Circled Gaming. Hi, it's great to meet you. Thank you. We're very excited about Big Pharma. If you're not familiar with the game, it's kind of a pharmaceutical simulation where you kind of build a factory and you learn to make drugs and you discover cures and things like that. We have to say, Tim, it reminds us a lot, sort of artistically, of Theme Hospital. Is it meant to be kind of a prequel to that?
I get that comment quite a lot, so don't worry. It's not quite a prequel. I would say it's the art style is especially heavily inspired, and the kind of the theme clearly in terms of it being about kind of the medical industry and that sort of thing. And we're trying to strive for that kind of mix between kind of cartoony and kind of realistic, but kind of like striving that kind of line down between the two of them.
Yeah.
Definitely heavily influenced.
Oh, that's good. So it's kind of deliberate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm guessing you hear that a lot. And especially because you have kind of a little advisor in the bottom corner who's kind of an old man in the same way. It's like...
His name's Leonard.
Okay, so is he the only kind of character in the game, is there?
No, there's a number of characters, and they mainly take the role of the CEOs of your competitor pharmaceutical companies.
Okay.
There's kind of a big cast of characters. They all have names, and they all have their own kind of specialties. So that's Leonard, and he's both your advisor, and sometimes you can play against him. But he's the kind of mad scientist. He's like looks a bit like Einstein. And then you have Jenny, who's like the explorer, and so she goes off to kind of locations and she finds new ingredients that she can use in her drugs. And yeah, so there's this kind of cast of characters you're going to be competing against.
But you're not kind of playing as a character.
Oh, and of course you get to choose to make your own CEO at the beginning, and you can choose how your CEO looks, and so basically you can choose one of those other characters to kind of to be your own. You won't be playing against them.
Okay, so you can choose male or female and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll make a lot of people happy.
Yeah.
So silly question really, but when people have only heard of your game kind of out loud, do they think it's about farming?
Yes, all the time.
It's
so frustrating. Yeah, they go, oh, what? Like at an event like this, they're like, oh, what are you here with? What's your game? And I'm like, oh, Big Pharma, and they're like, huh. It's a weird title for a game about farming, you know, and then I'm like, but then I have to explain. Luckily, when you write it down, it's spelled different, so you can see. But yeah, that's happened a lot.
So yeah, because when I mentioned I was kind of interviewing you today, a lot of people went, so what is that, like a Farmville sequel?
Yeah.
I was kind of like, no.
It's really different.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So tell us a little bit about the game, kind of how you came up with the idea and how it works.
Okay, so the original idea was I wanted to make a game, a factory simulation game, and I know that sounds really dumb, but yeah, well, I kind of love that idea of. Have you ever played a game called Transport Tycoon?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so Big Pharma is heavily influenced by Transport Tycoon, and what I love about that game is you get the sense of satisfaction by laying down train tracks, and it's like every time you lay a train track.
It's like SimCity 2000.
Right, same thing.
Yeah.
So I wanted a game like that, but then the difference would be you're building a factory and you're laying these conveyor belts between machines, but kind of something was missing. Factory simulation, it doesn't really have enough heart.
Difficult to sell, I think, sometimes.
I think so.
Although train simulator sells pretty well.
Yeah, this is true. But I actually had this kind of light bulb moment when I was in the shower and I just saw some pill packaging just to the side of the shower, and I just went, huh, pharmaceuticals, because I could apply this theme directly to all of the ideas I have for like a factory simulation game. And I think it's the great thing about the pharmaceutical theme is quite emotive. We all take drugs, the legal kind, and there's loads of controversy. Like when I first announced this game, Pfizer were doing some kind of takeover bid for GSK, and it was like people were talking about the pharmaceutical industry in the mainstream press, and I'm like, well, if I can kind of tap into that interest and controversy in this game,
absolutely. So
then
it's not
a
something
winner.
you kind of used a lot about already, despite the white coat.
No, this is just just for show.
So you were a mechanical engineer before, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. So I knew more about the kind of production side of things. I know more about the machines, than the kind of medical side of it.
So you've had to learn a lot.
I've had to do a fair bit of research. I should kind of put out like a disclaimer to everybody watching. It's not kind of 100% realistic, the game. So
do not attempt to take any medication you may have made a mistake.
And if you're doing a kind of a medical degree or something, I wouldn't play my game as research. I would just play it because it's fun.
Yeah, well that's a good way to picture it. It's fun. So are you're not trying to educate people or anything like that? You're not trying to kind of make a point about pharmaceuticals?
That's a different question, I think. I think I'm not trying to educate people how to make pharmaceuticals, but what I am trying to do is raise questions like, is the pharmaceutical industry set up in a way that incentivizes companies to make drugs for the good of the public?
Yeah.
Or is it set up that it kind of incentivizes companies to make drugs for the good of profit?
Yeah.
Like, for the record, I don't blame pharmaceutical companies for the decisions they make. I think the way the industry is set up, they're just heavily influenced, incentivized to kind of not necessarily do the right thing.
And maybe your game's kind of, it might make people sympathise with that, really, if you're kind of in those shoes and you're kind of making those decisions yourself.
Exactly. The game's called Big Pharma, which is a kind of it's a common term used to kind of describe these huge conglomerates. It's not to kind of quote Ben Goldacre's book on a similar topic. It's not bad pharma. I'm not trying to demonise the industry.
Sure.
I'm just trying to kind of portray it from a neutral standpoint, so that people might think about it. Because we don't think about how things turn up on our dinner plate, food. We don't really think about how things turn up in our pill bottles.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
I think it's interesting to ask those questions.
Yeah, so it's not kind of something you were thinking about from the beginning, but it's kind of something that's developed as you've gone along and kind of thought, actually, I want to know a little bit more about how it all works. Yeah, I think that's really interesting for everybody, actually. And I mean, I know you said it has kind of a neutral standpoint, but I know that you can make decisions in the game that are kind of better or worse, morally, so kind of like Mass Effect, kind of Renegades and Mavericks kind of things. So how does that work out? How does it play out if you do evil things? Are there bad consequences?
So there's no, there's no kind of bar which you're like, I'm a Maverick, I'm a Renegade. It's kind of completely in your own head how kind of moral you think you're being. Because I feel like it's unrealistic to kind of attach some kind of counter to it.
Yeah.
But what I would say is there are things you can do that are risky. For example, if you leave side effects in your drugs, sometimes you can still get them for approval trials, just like in the real world. Because I don't know if you've ever looked at a label for a piece of medication.
Always a mistake.
The research for this game was so easy. I just had to get some old medication I had to take a few years ago from my medicine cabinet, and then just copy the side effects into the game. You wouldn't. Oh my god! Like heart palpitations on a drug that I've taken.
That's pretty scary.
And it wasn't a serious, and it was like a painkiller or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of scary what side effects are in these things.
Yeah.
So it's,
I like that the sleeping pills say that they may make you drowsy. That's like what I'm paying for.
Well, yeah, exactly. That is kind of the point. But so what I'm getting at is you can kind of run those risks. So you can leave lots of side effects in your drugs, but you might run the risk of upsetting the public, and then they're not going to want to buy your drugs in the future. So you can kind of ruin your reputation.
Right. Okay.
But then there's more shady things you can do, like you can run clinical trials, which say run 5 clinical trials, and then only publish the one which has the good results.
Yeah, which is something that happens a lot in the real world, isn't it? Yeah,
right?
And kind of sponsored studies and that kind of thing. There's a whole lot of controversy around them.
Exactly. Clinical research organisations, which are private entities, and so it's kind of in their interest to give good results to the companies because that's their client. But it's it kind of blows your mind when you realise this stuff's going on. And so, like I say again, I'm asking the question, maybe there is a better way of setting up the system.
Yeah. So you're not kind of trying to impose a view on anybody, but just kind of saying, let's think about this a little bit more.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to see if people who kind of get really into the game, and I suspect that I will, given how many hours I've lost to Team Hospital, good hours I should say. It's kind of interesting to see where people go with that and kind of whether they turn into people who are more sympathetic to the industry, having had to make those decisions, or whether they turn into kind of evil megalomaniacs.
See, I don't really mind as long as they kind of go one way or another, as long as they're kind of thinking about it. I don't mind if people can choose to be kind of completely profit driven, but I want them to at least have that thing crossing their mind, going, I am making a conscious decision to be profit driven and not make that cure, which is going to be less profitable but potentially save more people's lives. So I think one of the grey areas in the industry where you're talking about private companies whose remit generally is to make money, just like my private company. They what was I thinking?
Well, it's things like when you have a drug that isn't going to make any money, but it's going to cure something, do you go ahead and make that, that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of one of the grey areas. Is for example, you might. cater to, for example, Western markets because they're in a position, they're wealthier kind of markets, and they're in a position to pay more for the drugs, even though there might be, we might be talking about anti-wrinkle cream, which isn't going to save any lives, whereas there could be something, tuberculosis kills, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people, in the developing world. Bit of a somber note.
Well, a little bit, yeah. I mean, you mentioned there that your company also has to develop financially and has to do well financially. I know that your first game, Iron Age, although it was incredibly well received and it was a brilliant kind of Android game, didn't do that well financially. And I know that you've kind of changed things since then, and you've changed the way that you're doing things. So what kind of advice would you give other developers from what you've learned?
That's a big question. So I'm going to answer with the thing that I think is most important, because there's loads of stuff. Like there's probably 20 things I can say. Sure. But the biggest lesson I've learned and the biggest change I've made is to think about not just how good your game is, right? Like mechanically how good it is, or even like how well you market it, or how well you do the PR. People always say that, PR marketing is so important, sure.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is to make the right game in the first place.
Yes.
And that comes down to things like theme and the naming. Like, it sounds...
no, it's true.
Like,
I mean, Goat Simulator got a ton of attention just purely from the name, right? Yeah.
So it's... and that... I've never even played that game, but I know what it is, right? Yeah. So it's to a certain extent, you could look at what I've done kind of cynically and kind of say, well, he's chosen to make something about the pharmaceutical industry because it's kind of emotive and it's relatively it kind of captures the imagination and it's easy to kind of write about in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's.
It's going to help you get headlines.
It's going to help.
Yeah, essentially.
So that is honestly my biggest advice. It's like really, before you even start making a game, really think about making that right game. Don't just make. I don't know. This is a bit cruel, but I'm going to say it. Like, don't make a side-scrolling puzzle platform. Like it's.
Don't make a version of Mario and call it Flappy Bird.
Yeah. Just kind of, yeah. I think I've said my piece.
Yeah,
but that's my biggest
enough.
bit of advice.
And also something that I think other developers could learn from you is that you've incorporated people's opinions and you've sought a lot of collaboration from kind of the people that are interested in the game, and that's always a great strategy because it makes them feel like they're involved, which means that they're going to be more interested in the game when it comes out. But what have you kind of learned from them? What have you changed in the game from people's suggestions so far?
Ooh, okay. Quite a lot.
Yeah.
Like I get so much thrown at me every time I do even just like a video blog. Or the most feedback I get is when I do like a design blog. So it's a written piece where I go through my current plan for a system in the game.
Yeah.
So a recent example.
A lot of detail in there.
I do, and that's when people come back with a lot of detail. And the comments are sometimes as long as the blog piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is it's kind of
But
cool.
then how do you know kind of whose opinions to take and whose to reject and kind of...
So I have to follow my
It
own...
might not speak for everybody.
To a certain extent, I have to kind of follow my own vision.
Yeah,
so I think that's important. It's one of the things you get from having one man designing the entire game.
Yeah.
Is I have this vision, and it might not be a perfect vision, but at least it's cohesive, and it's my vision. And so I have to bear that in mind.
90 stakeholders trying to change all that.
Because then you get something that's designed by consensus, and then you get there's the least objectionable thing rather than the best thing.
Exactly.
So
It's difficult to love things designed by ideas.
But saying that, it's incredibly helpful having people give me feedback, even on just little things like people just point out like obvious little flaws, like have you thought about I'm trying to think of a good example. The logistical side of it's interesting. So people, without going into too much detail on the mechanics of the game, people felt like there needs to be more logistical puzzles to solve.
Right.
So how about a machine which packs drugs into containers, into little boxes, which lets you store them in like a part of your factory more efficiently?
Yeah.
And this opens up these strategies. That's a wicked idea.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so that sort of thing, it's
Some
so
stuff
helpful.
you hadn't thought of.
Absolutely.
And some stuff you can like, that fits with where I was going anyway.
Exactly. That's
Or
the
like,
idea.
you've just suggested the thing I was about to do, but now I can pretend it was your idea.
Yeah. Has happened actually.
Really?
Well, noting that sometimes I just haven't got around to doing it. And people are like, why don't you do this? And I'm like, well, I was just about to do that. So I'm
But now you're going to think I did it because of you.
So that's one way of looking at it. But the other way of looking at it is, awesome, I must be thinking the right things.
Yeah, absolutely. You're thinking what your audience was. That's a nice way of looking at it, definitely. So the platforms that you're kind of working on, is it going to be a PC game? Are you looking at other platforms as well?
So what I can tell you right now is PC focused. Shortly after coming out, PC release, Windows, shortly after coming out on Mac and Linux. and then we'll see.
Okay. So I mean, you kind of switched from Android on your first game. Why so?
Two main reasons. So one, I think it's easier to galvanise a community around a PC game.
Yeah.
You wouldn't. I tried to blog about Iron Age, but you just some people kind of got interested, but you just don't. You're talking about a slightly different market, not a market is slightly less mature. And now, I don't mean that in the kind of general sense. I mean mature as in it's been around for a while.
Sure.
Whereas with PC, you have experienced kind of long-term gamers who really like to take an interest in the development of the game, not just playing it. Which is
exactly what you need. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's one reason, and the other is pure and simple. This sort of game, I just think, has a bigger market.
Yeah, and it's possibly easier to do things with a mouse as well. I really struggle with using things on anything other than a PC, because it just doesn't work as well without the kind of drag and drop and that kind of thing. It's just quite fun about it. Okay, so are we looking at a May release still, or?
Yeah. I did say in another interview today already, June, just because I kind of want to manage people's expectations. But here's the official talk. We are hoping to release a pre-order beta at the end of April. So what that means is, if you want to, you can pre-order the game at the end of April, and you get immediate access to the beta. And then when the game finally comes out on Steam, you get a Steam key, you get the full release, and obviously all updates that come from that. It's completely optional. I'm totally happy for people just to wait to release.
Yeah.
If they want to get access early and they want to help me fix the bugs,
and they're
improve
kind
the
of
gameplay,
okay with a slightly less finished
exactly.
version.
And that's going to be super bold. And this is not a finished game.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about a really long early access. We're not talking about years of early access. We're talking about a month or two.
Okay.
So I'm talking full release, May, June.
Fantastic, and it's going to cost how much, I think? Oh, sorry, different question.
Yeah, we haven't finalised price, so I'm not going to give you an answer.
Okay, fair enough. So what's kind of, I know obviously you're very much focusing on this right now, but what's kind of the future for you? I know you're kind of thinking about making a board game at some point.
When did I say that?
It's on your website.
I would like to make a Big Pharma board game.
Wow, that'd be amazing.
Can you imagine it? So you're kind of you draw cards, and the cards are different machines and different ingredients, and you kind of play them down to make production cards, and you get profit out.
Okay.
That'd be quite cool.
That would be great.
And so I would love to make a board game one day. The problem with board games is it's so much harder to get them into people's hands.
Yes, absolutely.
And you need a distributor.
Yeah,
and
so few people kind of buy a brand new board game now.
Exactly.
So a potential Big Pharma board game to look forward to in the future then, but in the meantime we are very much looking forward to the game itself. It should be out pretty soon, and we're definitely going to be playing on it and giving you our opinion of it on Shiny. Pretty excited, honestly. I think it's going to be amazing. So Tim Wicksteed, thank you so much for talking to us today, and thank you for watching.